We're here today to talk about mixers. We're here today to talk about club mixers in particular. What makes a club mixer? What are the big things that make these mixers different from mixers that you might find, for instance, on your DJ controller? Here is a pretty posh mixer on a pretty posh DJ system, but it's different to the ones we're looking at here. And also, what makes these kind of mixers different from the kind of mixers that you find in Scratch with turntables, with Scratch DJs and performance DJs? This is a Scratch mixer, right? It looks very different to the mixers that we've got here. So what is it about club mixers? Why are they the way that they are? And what are the features that you will find on club mixers when you're out and about? This is worth knowing because whether it is that you aspire to play on club mixers, and so you need to kind of get ahead, get up to speed beforehand, or just whether you want to play on Pioneer gear, because Pioneer is kind of the inventor of the club standard mixer. There's a few brands out there now. Either way, it's always worth understanding and knowing how these things work. Now, this is a recording of a live lesson if you're watching the recording. If you're one of the people who's lucky enough to be with us here live, that's great. You can ask questions immediately afterwards, but don't worry if you're watching the recording, which most people will be doing. You can also ask questions just by asking in the comments. So either way, we're here to help you as the world's leading online DJ school. Right, shall we begin? Club mixers then. Let me move my headphones out of the way. And by the way, this mixer here isn't flashing in real life, only because of the cameras here in the studio. These are two club mixers. These are two very different club mixers, and yet, as I'm about to show you, they've got many things which are exactly the same. And once you can DJ on this one, you can DJ on this one, or indeed you can DJ on, I pulled another one out to show you, this one here. So another club mixer. This is a Denon DJ X1850. I ought to introduce you to the mixers that we've got here as well. This is the Pioneer DJ DJM A9, just released, the replacement for the fantastic DJM 900 Nexus 2. And this is also just released, actually. It's the Reloop RMX 95. Very different price range to this. It's like 2 or 3 times cheaper than this. This is like 900, 1,000. This is like, you know, nearly 3,000. So there's a big price difference, but they're ultimately both club mixers. So what is it about these? What is it that makes a club mixer a club mixer? Why are they the way they are? So the first of 9 points. This section here, he said, turning the cue button on. This section here always contains 4 channels. I mean, sometimes they contain more, but look, most of the time it's 4 channels. Why? Because 4 channels is what you tend to have in a club DJ booth. Maybe 2 CDJs and 2 decks, or 4 CDJs, or just 2 CDJs or 3, and then an extra channel for something else. 4 channels is very, very standard. So you can always expect 4 channels on mixers like this. And you know, on a lot of DJ gear, on a lot of DJ stuff like, for instance, this one here, the DDJ Flex 4 from Pioneer DJ, it's only got 2 channels on its mixer. A lot of cheaper gear only has 2 channels on their mixers. However, club gear will always, always, always have 4 channels on its mixer. So that is the first point. Always expect 4 channels. Now, the second point is that they will always have filters on their channels. The filters are the big knobs underneath. This is something that's become industry standard. Now, with cheaper models, you'll probably only have a filter. This is the Remix 95 from Reloop, 2 or 3 times cheaper than this one. It's only got a filter, but they're individual for each channel. So you can turn the filter on that one and leave it off on the others, or turn it the other way on the others. They always click in the middle to go back to normal. And then the left will be one effect and the right will be the other. With filters, it's low pass and high pass filters. And with this unit here, it is low pass and high pass filters if you have the filter selected, but they also have a selector here. So the more money you spend on a mixer, the more likely you are to have more things that you can switch in instead of the filter, which is the standard. So you'll always have something here you can do on each channel, effects wise. The third thing that is common to all this kind of mixer is that you'll always have a way of switching what each channel is doing. Because although there's 4 channels, these mixers are designed so that around the back you can plug in loads of stuff. And we'll talk about this in a little while. And the reason for this is really simple. It's because they've got to be flexible. Club mixers have to be flexible, usable for all kinds of things. So you can plug in a lot more than the mixer channels that are available to you. So they'll always have switches. It could be a little knob like here, which switches between all the various things that you can do with the channel, or it could just be a little rocker switch like here, which again switches between what's possible with the channels. So this is very, very normal. The next thing that you find on all club style mixers, which is what we're talking about today. I've identified 9 things. I always try and go for 10, but I've gone for 9 because it makes the most sense. I've identified 9 things that whether you have never DJed on a club mixer before or whether you're scared of DJing on a different brand to the one you're used to, hopefully this will help you because you'll realize they're all the same. It's like different brands of car. So we're talking about 9 things. We've already talked about 4 channels. We've already talked about filters or filters plus other effects. And we've already talked about switching on inputs. So the 4th thing is the microphone control. It's always going to be down this side. It's always going to be down the left-hand side. So you plug your microphone in. The actual place where you plug your microphone in might be on the top, like on this one, or it might be around the back. But you'll always have the microphone selection down here, whatever it might entail. So we've got a low and a high EQ here, 2 mic inputs and a few effects. Here we've got 2 mic inputs, low and high EQ. Talk over button is another option. Sometimes you'll have a microphone and auxiliary switch, so there might be an auxiliary input where you can just switch it on quickly there. But this is always where you'll find it. It's always going to be on the left strip at the top here. So while we're on the left strip, a little bit lower down, you'll always find your headphone controls. So headphone controls are here for the main headphones on this mixer, the Pioneer DJ A9, because this actually allows you to use 2 headphones. They've got another set down here, but you'll always find the main set here and the main set here as well. Again, the controls you find are going to be very standard. If you've got a DJ controller, it'll be similar. So you'll have your volume, you'll have your ability to mix between the cued inputs and the master input. And you might have, if you're lucky, a split button, which will split the headphone to having the master output on one and having the cued output on the other. This one can do it as well, but it does it in a slightly different place. So headphones always going to be down here towards the bottom as well. And you're always, while we're talking about never shifting, always in the same place, up here. So on the right hand side, just to the right of the final 4th channel, you'll always find your VU meters for the master output. And you'll also always find your booth and master controls for the master volume. So you can see they're in the same place here. And it's the same, just as I keep pointing out, on this kind of mixer as well. This is just another version, another one we've got knocking round. You can see we've got our booth and masters and our VUs here. We've got our microphone stuff here. We've got our filters here. And yes, sometimes they add extra bits, but you'll always find everything laid out as I'm talking about. This is the X1850 from Denon. So the reason I'm giving you this lesson is to understand that these mixes are all very, very similar and for a reason. You know, you get a different brand of car and you get in it, you always know the pedals are going to be in the same order on the floor, right? You'd hope so. The steering wheel is always going to go left when you turn it left, etc., etc. There is a standardized industry layout for these things, and that's what I'm talking about today, the industry layout for club mixes, to help you if you've never DJed on one, but I'll also have a comforting tip at the end as well to share with you. Right, okay, so now we've talked about the headphones and the microphone and the master and the booth. Let's talk about the effects. The effects will always be down the right hand side. So this one here has got incredible effects, amazing effects with this incredible screen here that's new for this particular mixer. But nonetheless, this is the way it's always been, and the same down here. The knobs tend to be in the same place, laid out in the same way. So you have a selector for the effects, you have a selector for deciding what it affects. So this is uses a button matrix, this uses a knob, which is more standard. And then you have time and beat effects selectors there. And you always, always, always have a big knob that will flash when the effect is engaged. So this is the way effects work on this kind of mixer. You get the per channel effects here, and you also get a beat tied effect here, which you can switch to what you want. And so this is built into the mixer. These will work even if you plug in a record deck and play an old piece of vinyl. This is nothing to do with your software, it's all built into the mixer. Remember, these mixers are designed to be flexible, they're designed to work with all kinds of inputs. So that's the effects. Now let's take another look around the back, because I spoke a little bit about this earlier. You always get masses of inputs, and they're generally going to be masses of line inputs, which is the CD type input, and also phono inputs, which have got the built-in preamplifier in the mixer that makes everything loud enough to then work with the normal mixer functions, because a record deck has got a very low voltage output, very, very quiet output. And so around the back, There are separate sockets for plugging in record decks. It might have loads. So for instance, this mixer's got 4 inputs for record decks and loads of other inputs as well. This one's only got 2 for record decks and 4 kind of CDJ type inputs as well. But you will have many, many more inputs around the back. And as I said, the idea of this is that you plug this in and then all the control can be done from the top panel. There's no like, for instance, if there's only 1 input per channel around the back, then in order to plug something else in, you'd have to go and pull something else out. A lot of controllers that have got external inputs, that's how you've got to do it, but not on club mixers. Club mixers will always have more inputs than they've got channels, and then you'll have the switches on the top that let you do that. So you get more sets of inputs around the back than you've got channels for. Now, another thing that modern club mixers tend to have, with the notable exception actually of the Allen and Heath Zone 96, because most DJs will just play on Pioneer gear in pro DJ booths, but some DJs will specify the mixer they like, and it tends to be an Allen and Heath mixer that certain DJs like. So with the exception of the Allen and Heath Zone 96, which is totally analog, it's totally old-fashioned, you will always have a USB somewhere on the mixer, because the USB is where you plug in the computer, because it's got a SATA. That's not actually the computer one here, but you get a computer USB on the unit. It could be around the back, it could be on the top, but the point is you've got somewhere to plug a computer in. Why? Because plugging a computer in is going to let you use the sound card that's built into the units. Over here's our inputs that I was looking for. Plugging a computer in is going to let you plug in the sound card that works with the unit, in the unit, and then access the sound card from your computer. There are the USBs on this Reloop RMX 95. So that means you can record your DJ sets, and sometimes you can feed stuff from the computer into the mixer. So maybe you're DJing with Ableton, you can select the USB on the top and you can feed that into the mixer as well. So because modern club mixers nearly always nowadays are also extremely powerful sound cards, powerful in and out sound cards, that's the way you can route that audio both out and into the computer by using the USB inputs. And these both actually have 2 USB inputs for switching over DJs and such like. So that's the 9 things I wanted to talk about. Let's just reinforce why club mixers tend to be the same. 3 real reasons. 1, they've got to be multi-purpose. They've got to be, these are used for everything in that venue. So they could be used for plugging in MCs, for events, for when you've got a small live PA, also for DJs who want to use CDJs, DJs who want to use external samplers and pedals, DJs who want to use record decks. Everything gets plugged into these mixers, and so they've got to be flexible. Hence all the inputs, all the input routing, all the sockets around the back. They need to be familiar, because you might not be DJing on the brand that you like. If you're a big name DJ, yes, of course you are. But if you just walk into a smaller venue, they might not have the brand you like. Not all venues can afford to buy the best or the most modern. And so even if it's an older model, even if it's a model from a brand you've never heard of, if it's a club style mixer, you're going to get your 4 channels, you're going to get your filters, you're going to get your inputs, you're going to get your microphone and your headphones down here, you're going to get your VU meters down here with your master and booth controls, and you're going to get your effects down here. This is all going to be set, and so you will know very quickly how to get around there. And so the third thing is these mixers need to be switchable. So if the venue has a problem with this mixer, they might have to pull out an old Pioneer DJM 850 or something that they've had knocking around, which is going to be very different to this technology wise, but it will still be laid out in the way I was talking about, so everyone will know where to plug stuff in and how it works. So they're the 3 things: multi-purpose, familiar, and switchable, which is why club mixers are the way they are. So again, you may not always come across the one you want to play on. You might never have played on these before, but you will find that they always follow this layout. A good thing nowadays, which is something that has changed, certainly for some gear. So for instance, let's pull down this. This is kind of a DJ controller. DJ controllers have always kind of gone their own way, done their own thing. So this is a Pioneer DJ controller for Serato. And here they've tried to kind of imitate the scratch mixers, like the little scratch mixer I showed you earlier. So a scratch mixer actually looks a bit like this. It's got pads to control your software and paddles to control your effects. This mixer section here looks very different to this mixer section here, right? So if you'd learned to DJ, if you bought one of these as your first controller, then you're going to be like, wow, that's nothing like that Pioneer mixer in the DJ booth. And the same with other controllers, even this one here, even this standalone unit here from Pioneer DJ, which is the Opus Quad, this has got a mixer section which is a little bit more similar to the one we just looked at, but not the same in all ways. And controllers generally have tended to have their own kind of layouts. So you might get effects at the top here and here, for instance, instead of here and here. That's all cool. That's all just the way it is. Hopefully this video has helped you to understand what you're going to find in a club. But increasingly nowadays, mainly due to the influence of Pioneer DJ, manufacturers are kind of copying the way that this kind of gear works, even on the very, very cheapest gear. So for instance, let me just slide this in here. This is just the tiny little Flex 4, Pioneer DJ's cheapest controller that we'd actually recommend to people. The mixer section in here, apart from only having 2 channels, because it's a 2-channel mixer, is actually very similar to the one we just looked at. We've got our headphones down here. We've got our effects down this side here. We've got our volume output at the top here, as you'd expect. And we've got our 3 bands plus our filter. It's not exactly the same because it doesn't have all the nice monitoring and it doesn't have the microphone channel or anything like that down here, but it is nonetheless very close. And so you really, if you've got used to DJing on something like this, you'd actually find it quite simple to switch from this to this. You'd also love it because of all the extra stuff to play with, but that's another thing entirely. So a lot of the time nowadays, DJ controllers are starting to copy this layout a little bit more, which will be useful for you as well. Right, that is the end of the lesson today. However, it's not the end of this video because a lot of you have been chatting. I'm going to pull in this here, which is our comment cam, which is now currently snagging itself on the Denon DJ X1850 mixer, but I've done it. I've managed to get it past the mixer. And so this is where I've got all our live comments. If you're watching a video recording of this, that's fine. Just ask comments wherever you're just ask in the comments wherever you're watching, and we'll get back to you. My team and I will get back to you. But for the next 10 minutes or so then, we're just going to chat through. And by the way, that's it for the lesson. So we're done now. We can relax. Deep breath. Sorry about that at the beginning. I'll tell you why it all went wrong at the beginning, and I'll also tie that in with why we're a day late. So those of you that are regulars will know that we're normally live on a Tuesday at this time, 3 p.m. London, 10 a.m. Eastern. The reason we weren't live yesterday is that we were with James Hype filming in London, filming some really exciting updates to our 2 DJ courses, our DJ course and our production course that we've made with James. And we took all our microphones, all our equipment and stuff with us, and I plugged all the microphones in over here. Then it all looked okay, went live and realized that in plugging them in holding the little microphone box, because the microphones all run off, I'll show you, little boxes like this. In plugging it in, I'd accidentally held the mute button. And then I'd also plugged the microphone into the headphones output on the back of our switcher. And microphones don't like being plugged into headphones outputs. They don't tend to work very well when you do that. So that's what I'd done. And that's why we didn't have any mic at the beginning. But hey, all sorted out now. Right, so your questions about mixers. If you've got questions about anything else, by the way, we're always live on a Thursday, or I say always, most of the time nowadays, at the same time, 3 p.m. London, 10 a.m. Eastern. So do come join us then. Right, let's grab some of your questions or your comments about mixers. So these are big mixers, says my friends over at the DJ app. They really are big mixers. I'll tell you what, the Pioneer DJ MA9 is massive. I don't know if anyone remembers the old DJM. Was it the DJM 2000? Had like screens and stuff, and it was even bigger than this. But this is bigger than smaller mixers, which you would expect, like this little one here. But also, this is kind of the standard size of mixer. This is the Denon DJ X1850. I'll slot it in here on top, so you can see the difference in size. You know, so they've added this kind of extra bit of width on here. I imagine there are venue owners all around the place who are, you know, wishing that they hadn't done that, because they'll have venues where they can only just fit the gear in, or they've got cutouts for the mixers and stuff, and they'll have to rethink all of that. But yes, there is indeed a scope creep in this mixer compared to the older one. You Don't Like My Music says, now with stems, most of us finally have a reason to use all 4 channels. So what stems do, which is quite cool, is that it allows you in real time to divide up the track into the 4 constituent parts, or 3 or 4 constituent parts, however it works in the software you've got. And some of the software lets you then put those parts on different channels. You can have the a cappella and the instrumental separated. So if you were using this with DJ software like Serato, indeed you could do that, and that is a very good reason for 4 channels. Robert says, what is your thought on the Zone 43 compared with the Reloop? Right, let's get the Zone 43 out. What I'm going to do is unplug the Pioneer DJ MA9 and tuck it away. And then I'll pull out the Zone 43 because I have one here. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Zone 43 is an Allen and Heath mixer actually. This one was designed specifically for Serato. Let's slot it in, get the camera on it, and have a chat about them. So the Zone 43 is a Serato mixer, and it is got that Allen and Heath look and feel. Well, you can see if we're comparing the Zone 43 to the Reloop mixer, the Zone 43 is in many ways quite similar as far as the old club layout goes. So guess what? We've got our microphone at the top, we've got our headphones down here, we've got our 4 channels, we've got our per channel filters, although they're not actually fully per channel, but anyway, we won't go into that too much detail about that. We've got our switcher at the top, we've got our effects, our VUs here, and we've got some effects stuff down here. This is a very limited mixer compared to this one, in that this one has got only filters, and then they're very limited to what you can do with the filters. And this one here has got filters per channel and then a whole array of mix effects down here as well. This, however, is designed to work with Serato out of the box. It unlocks Serato DJ Pro. This doesn't. So if you don't have Serato and you want a mixer you can work with out of the box with Serato without paying for it, this could be the one for you. This has got, I don't know about the sound quality in this yet because I haven't tested it. This has got lovely sound quality. Allen and Heath are known for that. So I would say the big difference is if you are happy DJing with very good sounding but limited effects, basically filters, and you want something that unlocks Serato out of the box, this could be the one for you, the Zone 43C from Allen and Heath. If you want a more general mixer that's got a lot more effects, it can do a lot more. But if you want to use it, say with Serato, you're going to be paying the Serato fee to buy the software in order to unlock it, then you might want to look at this one here. This is a much older mixer. This one's actually brand new. So there's the differences between those two. Hope that's helpful to you. Let's pull the comment cam back again. DJ Stu C said, I had the 43C and I didn't like it at all. It just didn't feel like an Allen and Heath mixer. It's true, it doesn't feel massively Allen and Heath like this one here, I've got to agree. Certainly doesn't feel like a Zone 96 mixer, for instance. Right, Mixmaster G says, I almost forgot the show. Well, no, you didn't. It's me that wasn't here yesterday like normal, Mixmaster G. So Alex says, I've been interested in DJing on and off for about 10 years, but the equipment is so damn expensive. Look, some of this stuff really is expensive that we've been looking at today, but it doesn't have to be. You can start with something nice and cheap like this. The Flex 4 from Pioneer DJ, and this comes with Rekordbox free software that's very, very good. That's got everything you need to learn to DJ on. You know, I don't know what the prices of these now, $300, euros, pounds, something like that. And that's all you need. As long as you've got a laptop, you're off. So it doesn't have to be expensive. But yes, you're right. Some of the gear we're looking at here is damned expensive. And some of us love the gear, you know, living for the new piece of gear. Not naming any names. There's plenty of people here who I could call out for that, but there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, you're right. But luckily there's something for everyone now. And it is a lot cheaper to DJ now than it ever has been because the music's cheaper, and as I said, the gear can be cheaper as well. Alan says, Phil, DJ mixes are always generally the same height as turntables or media players, which is a very, very good point. Why aren't controllers ever the same height? Some DJs like to have a controller in between their decks. I've always wondered why. Some controllers like the Hercules Impulse 500 have got feet that you can make them high enough, and indeed some, like for instance the Allen and Heath Zone K2, this is an Allen and Heath Zone K2, this is a modular controller. So the idea of this is you slide it in next to your mixer and you get extra control over something. Now this is not a very high controller. I mean, they don't have to be high. That's the reason why they're not so big, Alan, because they don't have to be. But you're right, it looks a bit weird. I mean, you can't really tell from there, but if I show you the back view, look, it looks tiny, it looks ridiculous next to the mixers. But what they quite cleverly did was give you a case which not only looks after it, but you can tuck that in, and now it looks nice and proud next to the gear. So you can get cases that you can then unzip from and put your controller on top of if that's how you want to do it, and you've now got them at roughly the same kind of height. But yeah, good question, Alan, thank you for that. DJ Stu C says, I once had a Reloop controller and the build was lovely. Yeah, the build quality on the Reloop is great. This is a nicely built unit here for sure. This one here. We haven't reviewed it yet, but we are coming round to the review soon. So let's grab a point from Mixmaster G, who said, don't forget the digital audio ins and outs. Well, we are not bringing your attention to those here, mainly because they don't all have them. This one doesn't have them, for instance. But yes, you quite often do get digital ins and outs for plugging digital gear in. Apparently, yes, sorry, Robert's corrected me. The Zone 96 does have USBs. It's the 92 that's totally analog. You're completely right there. Thank you for correcting me there, Robert. I do love you guys and girls because you always make sure that we are factually correct by pulling me up on any slips of the tongue. So thank you for that. So let's grab one or two more of your questions live. So why do I not like pads on mixers and controllers, says Johnny. It seems like the craft isn't what it used to be. Oh, it's a big question, pads on DJ gear. You know, this piece of gear was launched with no pads on it, the Pioneer DJ Opus Quad. It's just got hot cues at the top. I actually think that's quite refreshing. I think they're fine, personally. Some people like performance pads, finger drummers and so on. Some people don't. The point is you've got a choice. I think that's the important thing. You've got a choice. What is the X pad used for on the DJing A9? I've put it away now, haven't I? The X pad is used for controlling the effects, so it gives you more control over the effects than you'd get otherwise. Hello to Cat's Groove, who's fashionably late, as pointed out by Mixmaster G. Hey, good to have you here, Cat's Groove. We're not normally live on this day. Stin Eldo says, why does James Hype still use CDJ 2000s? Are there problems on the 3000s? There are teething issues with James. Absolutely abuses in the best possible way the gear he uses. We were with James on Monday and he showed us the issue with the CDJ 3000s. It's an issue that happens after about 30 seconds of putting them through hell, and sometimes it happens like never. He can't quite figure out why it happens and when it happens. But basically, if he's tapping very hard using beat jump and cues, sometimes the timing goes out a little bit and it messes up his routines. He's working with Pioneer to get that fixed. I'm sure they will. So that's why he's currently sticking with the CDJ 2000s that he knows really well. So although you can't use a microphone plugged into a headphone socket, as we found out at the quiet beginning of this live, you can use headphones plugged into a microphone socket, says You Don't Like My Music. And indeed you can. So here is a trick for you if you never have your microphone when you need it. Take your headphones socket here, your headphones plug, and assuming you've got the adapter to turn it into a 1/4 inch plug, you can plug that into any microphone socket. So this microphone socket here, for instance, the one around not this one, because this one is a XLR only, but any microphone socket that's the same size as a headphone socket, you can plug it in there, and then one of the ear cups, I can't remember if it's the left or the right, will work like a headphone. You look absolutely ridiculous talking like that to your audience, but it will work. And I've got a story for you. There was a DJ called Steve Penk. Anyone remember Steve Penk of a certain age? In the UK, used to be a DJ on a radio station called Piccadilly Radio in Manchester in England, and I booked Steve Penk to come and DJ at one of the events that I was promoting. Like, as a 14-year-old boy, I was already into DJing and promoting, and I booked Steve as our guest DJ in our assembly hall at school, and Steve turned up and we suddenly realized we didn't have a microphone for our DJ gear, and he's like, well, what am I going to use? And I said, oh, you can just plug your headphones in. I discovered this myself. And he's like, what? And he hadn't even figured this out, and we plugged in the headphones, and good sport that he was, he did the show like a proper professional. So yeah, you can indeed plug your headphones in. So if you need a microphone at a push and you haven't got a microphone, then you'll find that might get you out of a hole sometimes. Right, yes, so Lala Loves Ya on Twitch says, my Prime 4 does still feel very different when I'm using it compared to this kind of mixer, especially with the effects and stuff. You're quite right. You know, Prime 4 is a great example of DJ gear that doesn't have the kind of either the scratch mixer layout or the club mixer layout. Are there any DJ mixers that would make good external mixers to have in addition to a controller, says DJ Matt Ames, but in place of something like an A&H Z10 or a Yamaha MG10XU? No, I'd say not. You know, you could just buy a very small mixer, like what's the smallest Pioneer called? Is it the DJM 450 or was it a 250? I can't remember. You could just buy one of those. The point of having a mixer between your DJ mixer and your PA system is that you can then EQ the whole room on that mixer. Because if you think about it, on a normal DJ mixer, you only get a master volume. You don't get an EQ on the master output. So if the whole room sounds like it needs a bit more bass, you'd either need to boost the bass on every single channel permanently, or if you're lucky enough to have a mixer that's got a bass treble control or 2-band or 3-band EQ on the master output, you could do it there. For instance, the DJing V10 from Pioneer has got that. But otherwise, you've got no way of doing that without, as I say, using your per channel EQs, which is not a perfect way of doing it by any means. So if you had a small mixer between this one and the PA, on the small mixer you could adjust the EQ. That's one reason. You could also use it for extra inputs or for microphones, etc. A lot of mobile DJs will carry a very small extra mixer in order to do that, but no, I'd say there's no reason to have a DJ mixer. You're much better off with a small live mixer. I actually have one here. Well, we've got a Yamaha AG6. This is a slightly different style of mixer. This is actually an audio interface as well, but they look similar to this kind of thing, really small little things like that. Right then, what else have we got? We're talking about the club mixers. What makes a club mixer? What is the kind of commonality between all the stuff that you find on club mixers? In order to get you accustomed to how these are for those days when you want to play in a club, or for when you are just getting used to the idea when deciding what to buy. You might want to buy a scratch style mixer. We've talked about those very briefly today. Scratch style mixers look very, very different to club mixers. Here's a scratch mixer. Or indeed, you might just be happy with the controller layout, like on the Prime 4, like someone just suggested. But if you are looking at club style stuff, it's always going to look like this, no matter what the manufacturer. So one or two more questions then. DJ Stu C says, would you ever consider reviewing some of the boutique mixers? Yeah, we kind of would. It's not at the top of our priority list, but yeah, we'd always take a look at boutique mixers, the kind of small companies making really nice little mixes, often with rotaries and stuff. On the other side, from performance pads, I said, you know, I don't mind this kind of pad. We were looking at the pads here on our second desk, the hot cues here, as opposed to the performance pads at the bottom here. But with me saying, oh, I don't mind that kind of thing, a few of you are saying we like them. DJ Matt Ames on YouTube, pads are addictive to play with, and I like pads. So there we go. Thank you for that. Right, one or two more then, and I'm going to be getting out of here. Do you have any recommendations on free visual options for parties? Free visuals for parties and live sets. Yes, look at the Serato website. They've got free visuals on there that you can just download and have, which is very nice of them. Isn't the Zone 43C discontinued, says Nexu Jin? I think it probably might be, yes. And hi Phil, is there anything bigger than the Behringer Flow? The Behringer Flow 8 for use in a battery-powered ceremony system? I've got no idea. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that device. Okay, people, listen, there is an article which goes through all the points on this. If you're watching live, it will be live very soon. You could be watching this video embedded in that article, which is great. But if not, there'll be a link somewhere nearby for you to go and see the written version of this. You will probably be watching the recording if you're not one of the lucky people that caught this live. And if you are watching the recording, you can still ask questions. Just do so in the comments underneath. But meanwhile, from me, Phil, here in the Digital DJ Tips Teaching Studio, this has been another live lesson looking at what makes a club mixer. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back very soon with another one of these. Until next time, bye-bye.